to Top 5, a show where we create a list and you listen to it because, I don't know, it's a list. It's Top 5.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Stop talking to us. Leave us alone. We're just here to talk about stuff, man. Why you got to pressure us and constantly ask us
somebody really really hates every time we do a show about comic books.
Right.
Every time we do a show about comic books, I hear from this person, oh, what do you guys do a show about comic books? I hate comic book shows.
Wait, is it for top 5 specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Every time you guys do a top 5 with comic books, I delete it. Well, here you go. He suggested a topic, and just so for grumpy listener number 427, here is the top 5 gateway films.
Hey, man.
Top 5 gateway films.
You know, I'll give him props. If you don't like what we're doing and you have something that can be a suggestion on 5, heck yeah. We'll go. We will go. We'll give you top 5 gateway films.
What are your top 5 gateway films that nurtured your love and appreciation of cinema? That's this week's top 5.
I didn't know that.
Well, what would you think they were? Like your heroin-related films? Your sandwich-eating films?
Steve.
Your films that just feature a gateway prominently, like
Stargate,
of St. Louis,
SJ1, and
the Two Towers.
The Two Towers. That one movie where the girl falls through the pond into Narnia, whatever that thing is. Yeah. Actually, no, it's just 5 Stargate movies.
Okay.
I did this wrong.
Well, my number 5 is The Maltese Falcon. This is a movie that I knew was around, but I didn't really pay attention to it until probably late one night in my senior year of high school, when our local PBS station had this weird series. It was like, it wasn't called Going to the Movies, but it was something like that, where they would essentially give you on PBS an experience of what it would have been like to go to the movies in a certain time period. So the show starts off with a cartoon, and then it would go into a newsreel, and then it would do a 2-reeler short, and then it would go into their feature film. And so one night I'm just watching this, and Maltese Falcon popped up in the third hour of this thing, and I was totally fascinated by this detective and this search for this bird, this statue that everyone is trying to kill everyone for, and backstabbing and double crossing. And even by the end, at the time, I was like, I'm not sure I understand what this is all about, but apparently it's about somebody's dreams. Man, this is a movie that I will watch again and again and again. And today, while I was putting together the top 5 gateway films, I actually sat down and watched Maltese Falcon again. So it's a great introduction to the noir genre if you're looking to get into that as a gateway film. And Maltese Falcon, definitely there on that list. Matthew, what do you have for your number 5?
Well, I didn't necessarily, because when you say gateways, I was thinking, okay, these will be the gateway films. This is a specific gateway to a specific actor's work.
It's fine.
An actor that I grew up, but everybody in my family, especially my Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob, by the way, is the one you can blame for all the comic book shows, listener 452, because he told me that I was too old for comics. And then I'm like, well, I better go check them out. And 40 years later, I own 12,000 comics. But that's not important right now. He also loved the work of John Wayne. And John Wayne has a lot of movies. And some of them, I'm told, are really, really good. But until like 2012, I was always like, 2012. Okay, picture it. Yeah, I've started a brand new job. And one of the things I have to do is go in and train for how weekends work on this job. Weekends work on this job, by the way, you stare into space and the phone rings about twice an hour. So I got to watch Turner Classic Movies with my trainer. And the movie that came up was a 1953 3D Western. Say that 10 times fast. 1953 3D Western. It's a great film called Hondo. And I had seen Wayne movies and gone, oh, yeah, I can definitely see what a John Wayne movie is all about. But as I watched Hondo, I finally got an appreciation for what it was all about, for what these John Wayne movies, that sweeping sort of, who's the director that did all that stuff with him?
With John Ford?
Yes. It's not a John Ford movie, but you can feel John Ford's influence in Hondo. And you can see what the whole thing is about. It's that movie that just kind of finally was the key to unlock that chest of, oh, now I understand why people are impressed by this actor. Now I understand why people have such a deep affection for, this big Texas dude walking around Waha and punching out horses and doing whatever you do. And of course, later, Zach on Film, we watched The Searchers, which is another one it's got a lot going for it. I think Big Jake is one that I saw, and I was like, yeah, I can definitely see this. But Hondo is really the movie that kind of unlocked that whole thing for me. It's one of the few Westerns that I really, really appreciate, that I can really talk to you about in a meaningful manner. There aren't a whole lot of those. And most importantly, it's Al Bundy's favorite movie. Mm-hmm. So, anything that Al Bundy, the famous quarterback of Polk High, loves must be awesome. That's why my number 5, 1953's Hondo.
Very cool. Rodrigo, what do you have for number 4? Or I'm sorry, number 5.
My number 5 is a movie that I saw for the first time in college. It's a Japanese film, and it's one that kind of, because it's such a simple example of it, like really led me to think about themes in movies. The movie's called Tanpopo. It's about a lady who runs this little noodle restaurant, and kind of this group of misfits who end up helping her to run this restaurant, intertwined with some weird vignettes about food. And that's the thing. The central theme of Tanpopo is sort of food and human relationships. So you see these little snippets of things in between the main story of like I like this guy who's like eating some ice cream, and he looks down and there's a little kid who has a note pinned to his shirt that says, "I'm diabetic, please don't give me any ice cream." And the kid just looks so pained to watch this man just eat this ice cream, and then the man starts picking on him about it. It's just like, it's just like all of these like weird little things. I will warn you though, this movie was made in the 80s in Japan, and it's about food. So there's like every once in a while, like an animal will get killed on screen so they can cook it. Like, and I think it's an actual thing. Like, I think they just actually went to a restaurant and actually like somebody like cuts open a turtle like right there in front of you. So so just a warning if you're gonna go down the list. But yeah, my number 5, Tanpopo from Juzo Itami, director.
Very cool. My number 4 is one that if you are trying to look at something that kind of codifies the aesthetics of an 80s movie, the lighting, the feel, the slickness of an 80s movie. There is one that I truly love, and it's a great way to look at how lighting plays a role, composition plays a role. It's Back to the Future, the very first movie. If you look at that movie, if you look at every single frame, even the stuff that takes place in the 50s, you can see this is 80s written all over that film, and its look and its feel, and the fact that it's shot on film still in the 80s. It really has a very specific look. And if you're looking into something that will create a love or appreciation of the aesthetic side of film, Back to the Future is definitely one that is not highbrow. It's not, super stupid, but it is a good, solid film that will kind of show you what a decade's worth of movies kind of look like in one location, a high production, high profile film. And that is Back to the Future, my number 4. Matthew, What do you have for number 4?
My number 4 is kind of a weird one because it's not the first thing that I was exposed to by these filmmakers. But my appreciation of this movie made me go back and look at their previous work with new eyes and appreciate what it is they had done. And really, it's also the point where I first fell completely in love, man crush, on a brilliant actor who's also one of those kind of method weird guys.
Matt Damon.
A man named Val Kilmer. The movie is 1984, Top Secret, by Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker. The ZAZ team, as we know them, these guys are legendary for making weird parody movies. And I had seen Airplane when I saw Top Secret. But Airplane didn't grab me the way Top Secret did, because Top Secret it's dumb in all the best ways. It's a parody of Elvis Presley movies. It's a parody of spy movies. It's a parody of weird 50s Cold War films. But it has so much. If you've seen anything by these guys, some of them did the Scary Movie franchises. I think, God help us, they actually led into the Epic movie and stuff like that, where the joke is, here's a scene from another movie. But before they did all of that, in Top Secret and Airplane and the Kentucky Fried Movie, which is utterly brilliant, they took references to other movies and put them in so seamlessly that sometimes you don't catch that it's a reference. But then they point it out and go, And I have to appreciate anyone who's so joyful about a joke that they will say, this is my joke. You're about to hear my joke. Tell the joke and go, that was my joke. Come on, guys. What'd you think of the joke? In a lot of ways, Top Secret is a major influence on my own humor, for good and for ill, because there's a downside to that. As Stephen will tell you when he, no-sells my jokes just to be mean.
What?
Sometimes it doesn't always work. There's a whole scene in this movie that is shot in reverse. And the audio is left in reverse. And they subtitle it and claim that it's Swedish. And it's this beautiful scene where they literally walk across a room and they climb up. Well, in the initial sequence, they slid down a pole, like a fireman's pole, but they go through this whole scene and then they slide up the pole at the end because, of course, they're running the film backwards. And you almost don't realize it until a dog runs across the room backwards at the very end. And then you're like, okay, that's what makes this joke so ridiculously funny. If you've never seen Top Secret, I want you to go see it, because it's not the best of the Zucker-Abraham the Naked Gun, the Hot Shots, the basketball people. It's not their greatest, but I think it's their most together, their most cohesive movie, in that it tells a story within the framework of those jokes, and plus gives Val Kilmer a career. So you can't, crap on that at all, because without Val Kilmer, there wouldn't be Batman in the movies.
Yes,
true fact.
There you go.
Val Kilmer was the best Batman. Fight me.
Rodrigo, what do you have for number 4?
Number 4, let's see. So, my number 4, I saw it once when I was young, and then I didn't see it again for a long time, and I never knew what it was the first time I saw it. I just remember this, maybe 20-minute stream of nonsense that I actually watched once, until a friend of mine was like, oh man, let me show you this movie. And it was that movie. And it was really a gateway for 2 reasons. One, as a very young person, I was like, what is this movie? I kind of wanted to decipher it. And then once I watched it, it's a movie that evokes a feeling, and it's worth kind of sitting there and picking apart. It's worth analyzing to figure out why that feeling comes to you. That movie is, of course, Freaked. Yeah. It's 1993, stars Brooke Shields and Randy Quaid, I want to say. Yeah. And of course, Alex Winter as kind of the main character. It is, after the first time and then I saw it again, it is actually a 2-hour stream of nonsense. Well, an hour and a half. And it is just insane. It's just crazy. It doesn't make any sense at any point. At no point does this movie make any sense. And yet it's at the end of it, I always felt interested and happy and weirdly kind of grossed out, all at the same time. It's a movie that really evokes a weird set of feelings. And I'm still to this day trying to decipher how it is that it accomplishes them. Is it just the special effects? Is it just the writing? Could they have done this differently? I don't know. Freaked is something that you have to see to believe. and definitely something that even if you see it, you might not understand.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. You know what's terrifying, and a good introduction to horror movies is you have to go back to when you're 3 years old and you're watching a black and white television in 1973.
Okay, wait. This is a very specific flashback you're having.
Yeah, I've told it before. When I was a young kid, three or 4 years old, they were running The Blob, the Steve McQueen version of The Blob on television. And it totally freaked me the heck out because here are two people trapped in a freezer and there's this big blobby thing trying to crawl in, push its way underneath the freezer. And then there's these people in a movie theater and this thing is squirting out of the air vents of the theater. And there's an old man in a woods poking at something with a stick and it grabs onto his hand. And pretty soon he's consumed by the Blob. And man, what a great introduction to kind of horror films and how they can traumatize you and cause you to have nightmares. Even though when you look at the Blob, what is it, 1954 or something like that?
53, I think.
Yeah, something like that. For the Blob, you're like, that's not really a very scary movie. But probably in 1950s, it probably was a horrifying movie. And for a young child, it is also a very horrifying movie.
Holy moly, it's from 58.
Yeah, 58. There you go. And so I've got to always put down the Blob as something that is kind of an introduction to horror movies. And even though it's not maybe super scary by today's standards, in the time period and for what it is, it's scary enough to be a great gateway into the horror genre. So that is my number 3.
It's scary because of the color.
Yeah, see, I watched it in black and white, so it wasn't until maybe it was been like in the 1980s, and this is another story I've told before, but bear with me. In the 1980s, we had moved out into the country, and we had color television, and the Blob came on in color on a Saturday sci-fi whatever horror fest that CBS would run. And so I watched it, and then my mom had to take me over to a babysitter's house. Well, I had to go up to their back porch, and I don't know if it was a hedge apple or what it was, but there was something right by their porch that looked just like the egg or the meteorite that the old man was tapping with his stick. And I saw that, and no one was answering the door, and I freaked the hell out and ran as fast as I could back up the driveway. My mom is backing out of the driveway of these people's houses. I'm like, no, don't leave me. It's gonna get me. So yeah, the Blob is just one of those movies that sticks with me. Today I watch it and I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is fantastic. But I don't want to show it to my kids because I don't want to traumatize them at an early age. I'll show them the 1980 or what is it? Was it 82 version of the Blob? That one I'll show them before I show them the 58 version of the Blob.
It's like 86, I want to say, but yeah.
Yeah.
Shawnee Smith. I love Shawnee Smith.
Yeah. Rodrigo, what do you have for number 3?
Number 3. So number 3, for a long time, I thought that I didn't like musicals. Like I would sit there and watch like South Pacific, and I was like, this is not something I'm interested in. Even stuff.
If she was a bell, she'd be ringing, man.
Yeah. Even, I mean, and you know, I have since gone back and watched South Pacific, and there's lots of good stuff in South Pacific. You know, same thing with like, I mean, I remember like watching Grease and not liking it. You know, just like
stupid flying cars, not realistic.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even that. It was just like it's weird that they're like singing, and it's not songs I like. And what the heck, man? But there was a movie that kind of like switched it for me, and it was just because the music was so good. It's like even the subject matter was somewhat like difficult for me to get into. But it's just the songs are so good, and it's one of those like musicals where they never stop singing. They're just like singing the whole time. Talking about Jesus Christ Superstar.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, that's
and especially
who in the world do you think you are?
That version, that movie version of Jesus Christ Superstar has just like the kickinest soundtrack.
Yeah, it does.
In the world. I mean, it is crazy.
Isn't that the same guy that did Phantom of the Opera and
yeah, it's
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
You know, the movie takes some very strong positions with the Jesus story.
Oh yeah, it does.
And it's good. That's great. I mean, it's controversial. It's interesting, but it was a big gateway for me because I'm like, well, maybe there's more to musicals. And since then, I've really been able to enjoy musicals. I've been able to kind of like recognize things that aren't played as musicals, but they actually are, like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," right?
Mhm.
Which is clearly a musical. It was just never advertised as such, you know. And also just get it just gets you to a point. It's like I think a lot of us, possibly the three of us, or I know that Matthew has, like, grew up like kind of not liking country music,
Yeah,
like having this
I was the
aversion
same
to
way.
it. Yeah, and it just takes finding that country song or that group or that artist that finally gets you thinking about the rules for country music. And then you're like, okay, so within this frame, which is different from rock and roll and different from this other stuff, what are they doing that's clever within the limitations that the genre sets for them? And that was kind of what Jesus Christ Superstar did for me. I was like, what is this doing that no one else was doing? And it kind of allowed me to create a little lexicon for myself for musicals.
Cool. Matthew, what do you have for number 3?
My number 3 is actually another gateway to the work of specific artists. Not necessarily as fundamental as Val Kilmer, but some would say one of the more obvious influences on my personality in, how should we say this, terms of loudness of expression. 1989 was a good year for me. I went off to college, met a bunch of nice people in Stephen, and I saw for the first time on VHS. You don't know what too mean is.
Yeah, that was mean, Matthew. My feelings are hurt. Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
Both of them?
Feelings.
Okay. Anyway,
wow.
This movie, I saw it with Carl. You remember Carl. He's one of the people that I met that was cool. And all right, Stephen, that was too mean.
You're too mean.
I apologize for the inconvenience.
No, you don't. That's if you knew it was mean.
See, you can't call too mean and then throw aside the apology. That's
man.
That's just self-flagellation. 1989 black comedy starring the bad boys of magic, Penn and Teller, in a movie called Penn and Teller Get Killed. Now, the thing about this movie that is very important is my daughter has recently, in the last couple of years, taken a liking to Penn and Teller because of their show, Fool Us. I have not yet showed her their other show with the title that I don't say on a family podcast, but I think eventually I will. And I showed her this specifically because she said, it's like Teller never talks. Here's a selling point for you, kids. If you want to hear Teller talk, this is the movie for you. That's not the big selling point. It's a movie that starts with Penn and Teller doing their shtick and hanging out and doing kind of a heightened version of their real lives. And Penn suddenly says on television, I wish someone were trying to kill me. And somehow throughout the movie, people start trying to kill Penn. And then it gets weird. And then it gets super weird. And then it gets dark and like strangely brutal. And then it turns into a strange noir movie for about 10 minutes. And then it gets weird again. And then it comes back around. And at the end, it ends with a voiceover of Penn saying, nope, that's it. We're really dead. The title of the movie is Penn and Teller Get Killed. We couldn't very well have a happy ending. But how you get there is so worth the price of admission. And it really, really locked me into an appreciation of what Penn and Teller do, because they do that thing where they show you how magic tricks are done, but they don't show you how magic tricks are done. It's really, really hard to do this. And it's a question of Teller being incredibly precise and Penn being incredibly loud. And being loud in such a way that you don't notice the subtle things that he's doing. And frankly, I probably took a little too much of Penn's personality into my own in college. But hey, you're trying to discover yourself, trying to find out who you are. I think these days I've kind of mitigated it, throwing a little Val Kilmer, because, Val Kilmer, without him, we wouldn't have Batman. 1989 was also a good year. It was right before we had Batman. But Penn and Teller Get Killed is just a really, really amazing film. Hasn't necessarily aged well, but it's a really good sort of a viewpoint into that late 1980s, early 1990s. Bill Clinton is about to get elected in 8 years of presidency. And if you want to know what kind of my 90s were like and about, Penn and Teller Get Killed won't show you, but it'll give you enough of a feeling that if I told you about my 90s, they'd feel eerily familiar. And that's the important part. And that's why it's my number 3. Really a formative film for me.
There you go. If you also want to see Teller talk, you can go see their Vegas show.
Does Teller talk?
Yeah, because afterwards you go out and meet him in the lobby and he'll talk to you. He's super cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, he's super cool.
Yeah, Teller is one of those guys. If you actually follow him on social media or listen, he's such a laid back guy. He is so super chill. And then you see the stuff that he does professionally and you see the intensity that it has to take. And it's terrifying what must be going on in that man's head. And
I'm pretty sure that I want to say he got interviewed by Mark Maron, perhaps, and it was really great. Penn and Teller got interviewed, and it was great. So you go track those down.
I think he was also on John Fugelsang recently and actually spoke.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, number 2. My number 2 is one that is a great gateway into sci-fi that is not horror sci-fi, right? Like The Thing is horror sci-fi. If where aliens are coming down to kill us all and destroy us all, that kind of sci-fi. I mean, you look at basically every movie that I watched growing up that had aliens in it, they were here to destroy us, right? Invaders from Mars, The Day the Earth Stood Still, just Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. Those are just movies where the aliens are trying to kill us. But here's
Invasion
a movie.
of the Body Snatchers.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, all 3 of them.
With Hawkeye Pierce standing in the mall going...
But Steven Spielberg came out with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And wow, talk about a movie that really kind of tries to change your perspective on what it means for aliens to be out there and what the abductions mean, and creating this very weird sense of wonderment and magic around the whole thing, and one man's quest to find out what it means.
Right.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it was tough. It almost made my number 1, because when I look at films that I would watch and analyze again and again and again from the storytelling perspective and how shots are put together and how editing is done and how performances are made, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is definitely a movie to watch. And it's earned a good place there in number 2 for me.
I bumped into it on cable the other day, and I was sitting and watching it, and that sequence where the guy with the synthesizer is trying to communicate at the end.
Yeah.
I remember every note of that music, and I didn't realize I remembered it until I sat and watched it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like ingrained in my memory to the point where I didn't realize it until right now.
Yep. And that big, in the story universe of the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that giant light up musical thing was actually, they borrowed it from Stevie Wonder's, who was going on tour with it. And it's really weird too, because
I think I remember that from the novelization.
Yeah, the novelization really goes into detail about it, and it's probably things that were mentioned in the film but were cut out. For example, there's another piece. If you look when Neary goes out into his backyard and he's sitting on the swing and he's trying to, and I think this is right after his wife left him. If you look in the background, up on the roof, there's like this platform that's been put up on the roof. And in the novelization, it explains that one of the things that he was doing before he did the whole build Devil's Tower in his living room thing was that he had built a platform up on his roof so he could look up at the stars, and he was using telescopes to try to figure out where these aliens were coming from, or if he could spot where they were coming from. And so, when you see that little detail in the back, you know that there was probably more in the novelization that didn't make it to screen or was cut out from the final take just for time purposes. I mean, this is a pretty long movie, but I mean, if you're an X-Files fan, if you love that kind of conspiracy theory stuff, Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a great movie to watch if you haven't watched it. And I don't know. I don't know. I would imagine more people, I'm sure Rodrigo has seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind by choice and not by force. But I would imagine someone like Zach and younger probably have no idea what this movie is.
Yeah, it doesn't have the cultural footprint that it did in the 80s.
Yeah, Close Encounters falls to the cracks, basically just because it's just kind of in the middle of this like big legacy, both of like the big
Mm-hmm.
spectacle films
Mm-hmm.
and also Steven Spielberg stuff. You know, is like he's better known for other stuff
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah. But this is, I mean, back in the day, I mean, this is the same year that Star Wars came out,
Mhm.
and people are just, this is a total early Steven Spielberg. This is a great example of early Steven Spielberg. This is right up there with Jaws. This is right around the same time that we have 1942. This
1941.
is
Terrible
1941. Says
Don't ever
you.
watch 1941. Never
but,
watch it.
Close Encounters. This is Poltergeist territory, and so this is Steven Spielberg before he, I don't want to say got soft, but before he started moving away from sci-fi
Horror.
type entertainment. Yeah,
It's a young, hungry, almost angry Spielberg, and there's a lot of that same thing that drove Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
That it feels like an indie movie and some guy is making this on a shoestring budget, but clearly not.
Right.
And I really appreciate that. Plus mashed potatoes.
Yeah. Rodrigo, what do you have for, let's see, which order are we going? Matthew is next? I forgot.
I think you switched. I think last time.
Well, anyway, Matthew, you go with your number 2 and then we'll hit Rodrigo.
All right. My number
Rodrigo.
2. Hey, Rodrigo, no! There's something to be said about any movie that casts a 45-year-old Buddy Hackett as a metaphysical hippie.
Herbie the Love Bug?
Right. Herbie the Love Bug. Right there, you've got my number 2. You've locked it down because that sentence is just nonsensical enough to lock me down and really bring me into not just an appreciation of Disney movies, because this thing came out right before I was born. This was a movie that you could see on the Saturday matinees throughout my childhood in Stevens, back when there was such a thing as a Saturday. And we, growing up, would watch these movies and not really digest them because it's on. But the first time I sat down and I actually paid attention to the original Love Bug from 1968, it's a very strange film, even by Disney standards, because it's the story of a car that happens to come to life and how it brings Dean Jones together with the woman from Knots Landing and they live happily ever after. But the soul of this movie is basically in the acting of Buddy Hackett, of Dean Jones, and of course the bad guy, who's that English bad guy with the mustache.
Eddie, what's his name? Eddie Thomas or whatever?
Terry Thomas?
Terry Thomas.
I don't remember. I don't know if it's actually Terry Thomas.
Okay,
but
I'll look it up.
It's one of those guys because he's just one of those, whoa, I'm British and evil.
Right.
The Eddie Izzard theory of British accents are evil because of the American Revolutionary War.
Right.
But
David Tomlinson.
Yes, that's the guy.
Yeah. Who is in Mary Poppins? You know him from Mary Poppins.
Yes, that's why he's the dad from Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
But throughout this movie, basically, you get these sequences where, first of all, the big mistake and what really threw Herbie under a bus was in 2005 when they added computer animated eyes to the car. The car cannot have any anthropomorphic elements other than the fact that it's a car that can think and do things with its doors like little arms. But I love the Love Bug. I love all the Herbie movies, even the racist one. And all of the Herbie interactions. I used to watch the Herbie television show that was briefly on ABC. You know who played the driver of the Herbie on the TV show, Stephen?
The guy that does the voice for Speed Buggy?
No. Bruce Campbell.
Oh, cool.
Was in the Love Bug TV show. But
he was also in the movie.
Yeah. It locked down, for me, a love of the Love Bug. Mostly because of how cool that movie is. And if you actually see it back to back with the sequel, it's even cooler. Because in the sequel, everybody from the first movie is gone and Ken Barry is there, but it's okay because Ken Barry recently replaced Andy Griffith. He's used to replacing people you love. And he just sort of slips in. He's the equivalent of hospital jello, inoffensively sweet in a way that you automatically go, you know what? This is fine. And in that movie, Herbie actually calls all the Volkswagens in San Francisco to help him at the end. This army of animatronic Volkswagens is, as long as you don't think about the fact that every machine around you is implicitly alive by the logic of this film, then it's a sweet, touching movie. Think about your car. Think about what your car has seen. Think about your phone or your webcam. You don't want these things to come to life. But if this were the world of the Love Bug, you would, because it would all be wacky, good, clean fun. And that's why it's my number 2, unlocking my love of that Disney type movie, and also, Herbie.
Yeah, good, clean fun. A movie in which Dean Jones and Suzanne Plachette get drunk on Irish whiskey.
First of all, it's Michelle Lee. And Herbie gets drunk too, thank you very much. There's nothing funnier than a tipsy Volkswagen burping all over the place. And you know what else? Herbie is so awesome that he comes in first and third in the final race.
Yeah. An interesting thing about the Love Bug movie, it is also one of this is some movie nerd stuff. When you talk about the history of keying in films,
yes,
you'll have to look and see which one came first, I'm pretty sure Mary Poppins came first. But in this is one of the early times when they're using and this was a Disney process and not really used by everyone else because Disney made it proprietary. And this is the yellow sodium vapor keying method, where everything would be lit up with these yellow sodium vapor lights. And then it would be basically shot with 2 different film cameras at the same time with a split diopter so that they could get a black and white matte and the film at the same time without having to go back and reprocess a bunch of stuff. And so like the scenes with Dean Jones running through San Francisco are shot in one of these giant yellow sodium vapor screening processes. It's very few. The other one was Mary Poppins was also used. I think
Mary
it was the
Poppins
one that
was like 4 years before.
Yeah, it's the one that pioneered it, but I think they finally perfected it, or maybe it was the last film to use it was The Love Bug, but it's really fascinating when you look at it from that technology side. Besides a beetle driving along the rooftops of San Francisco.
That's actually Herbie Rides Again.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, well, you said both movies, so
that's true. Right. They are the same.
They are
and
the
plus,
same film.
Get that wonderful moment where they throw a wheel, so they have Buddy Hackett leaning out the side of the car for counterbalance, and they drive on 3 wheels. Come on,
because Rodrigo, what do you have for number 2?
Oh, sorry.
My number 2 is a movie that really made me, probably the first movie that made me realize that sometimes movies are secretly other movies or other books or something else. And it kind of got me into this idea that, there's only so many stories, only so many tropes, and things just get kind of rearranged. And that was The Lion King. So, I didn't think anything. I really liked it the first time I saw it, but eventually it kind of struck me that The Lion King was kind of Hamlet in a lot of ways. And it's not a perfect copy, obviously, nor should it be. But I remember thinking about that, and I'm like, what other movies are other movies? And it kind of, in a way, ruined movies because, because now you start watching a movie and you're like, this is,
this is Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, this is Herbie Rides Again.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like even, and especially when it comes to TV, because a lot of the time, episodic TV kind of gets into those like single shot trope kind of things. It's like in this one, the main character is possessed, and like in this one, 2 characters are trapped in an elevator or a freezer or something, right? And really, it was kind of realizing that The Lion King shared a lot of points of similarity with Hamlet, that it really made me start considering that certain things are like other things. And I really enjoy The Lion King. It wasn't a thing where I was like, oh no, it's Hamlet. How dare they? It's like,
right. Hey, wait, actually, this is Hamlet. What the what?
Yeah, and actually, that actually expands to a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of like posts around the internet where people like come down on old school Disney for reusing animation. Because like that thing where like Duchess is dancing is the same as that thing where like Maid Marian is dancing and stuff like that. But it's like, man, they were like inventing animation as they went. Right. It's like, you got to cut him some slack. It's really not that big a deal. So yeah, for me, my number 2, The Lion King, is kind of a movie that got me thinking about movies in this particular way.
Very cool. I think we have made it all the way up to our number ones.
Number one.
My number one is the one that got me saying, hey, I want to do this kind of stuff. I want to work in this industry in some way, shape, or form. And I don't need to retell this story 100 million times. So I'll just say Raiders of the Lost Ark, a fantastic movie. I sat there in the theater and said, oh my God, this is brilliant. I want to do this. And that's my number one.
Yeah.
Matthew, what do you have for number one?
That classic Raiders of the Lost Ark movie. Yeah. No, wait, that's the music. Well, my number one is likewise one that we've probably talked about a million times, but I'm going to go in a little more depth because I'm the guy who talks. In 1985, 4, MTV was still a thing. And people will tell you, oh, that was back when MTV played movies. Those people suck and don't talk to them and tell them to shut up. But more importantly, MTV played The Monkees. And I was like, oh, this monkey stuff is kind of interesting. It's kind of fun, but is it for me? And that's where my friend Gator stepped in. Gator actually had a complete collection of all of the Monkees on vinyl, and he also had their movie on Criterion Laserdisc, of all things. I don't even know what that is, but I know that it's expensive and I couldn't afford it. But it's okay because Gator's father owned the local Chevy dealership. And so we sat down one afternoon and he's like, hey, you know that monkey show? Check this out. And we watched 1968's Head, which is the Monkees' only film. It's written by Jack Nicholson and Bob Rafelson, the guy from 5 Easy Pieces, guy from Easy Rider. And it is basically this weird black comedy deconstruction of the idea that the Monkees are a manufactured pop group. It's very weirdly modern for a movie that's 50 freaking years old. And I think I watched it just this spring and again went, wow, there are still parallels here to modern pop culture, which is utterly ridiculous and also kind of cool. But when I sat down and I watched that movie, it was once again that thing that just sort of clicked for me and went, okay, I get it. I see what these guys are about. And now I want to watch all of their episodes and listen to all of their music and basically quote them for eternity. And 20 years later, here I am. Mission accomplished. Aye, aye, Captain. And that's why my number one is Head, the Monkees movie from 68. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. And if you don't like it, well, I don't love you anymore and we can't be friends. And my mom says you can't come over and play.
All right.
That's not true, by the way.
Rodrigo, what do you have for number one?
My number one came out in 93, so I was like 10 when I saw it. And it's really a movie that, like, sort of like Jesus Christ Superstar, gave me sort of like a means to compare other movies to, as far as action, as far as dialogue, as far as plot lines being resolved and characters getting development. And I feel that this movie is like really strong in all of those senses. So at least, you know, you can be like, well, we'll remove 1 point from the baseline for doing this or for doing that. And for me, that movie, my number one is Jurassic Park. You know, Jurassic Park is a great action movie. It's a great horror movie. It's a great character movie, you know, and it's like in all of those ways, it's very simple. It had huge innovations in special effects and in, you know, basically in visual effects. But the individual beats of Jurassic Park are really nothing that new. They're just good, solid movie making executed really well, pretty much throughout. You know, you can say what you want about the veracity of their dinosaurs, you know, whether, you know,
No
dinosaurs
feathers.
did this. Yeah, dinosaurs did this or that. But, you know, at the time, this is actually, as a side note, at the time, Jurassic Park was transgressive. It was like, there's this idea that's really making the rounds about dinosaurs being related to birds, and Jurassic Park really brought it to the fore. Compare that to Jurassic World, where that idea has shot into the stratosphere, and now the real transgressive thing would have been, yeah, dinosaurs have feathers, dinosaurs behave like this and like this, and instead of being bold like Jurassic Park was, Jurassic World took the easy route and went like, no, we're just going to give you the same dinosaurs, except for the ones we make up, which is actually something Jurassic Park also kind of did. But anyway, yeah, it's like the science of Jurassic Park aside, and the kind of like weird little action movie plot holes aside, which there are some, Jurassic Park is really tight, just from beginning to end. Every character is just like hurtling towards their destiny, and it all kind of makes sense in that sort of big, shiny Hollywood way. So I just have always found it as like a really good rubric. It's one of those movies where I was like, here's Jurassic Park, here's The Matrix, and I'm like, all right, The Matrix, you can hang out over here with Jurassic Park. Like, here's Jurassic Park, here's Jurassic World. It's like, Jurassic World, I'm gonna set you like over here, you know?
Cool. And it's got an awesome soundtrack by John Williams.
Awesome
Yeah,
sound.
it
Yeah,
goes.
absolutely.
Yeah, different song there, man. All right, everybody, there are our top 5 gateway films. It's now up to you, the listener, to head over to majorspoilers.com and share your top 5 gateway films that nurtured your love and appreciation for cinema. We want to read them. Other people want to read them, because everybody loves a list. See you next time, everyone.
This podcast is copyright 2016 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.